All right. Brought the people back, gave them this information, said, based on these trade-offs, which elements of these scenarios do you like best? Which work best? Which satisfy your values best? And they could kind of pick the elements that they liked. We did this through the keypad polling. We did it through paper surveys. We did an online survey where people who couldn't go to a meeting could go online and respond. And I think we ended up with somewhere around 3,000 people participating in this process. Finally, there was the vision that came out of it. We released this vision at a summit in, I think it was about November in Logan. Mark Gibbs, a representative from Idaho, was there. Governor Herbert from Utah was there. And they rolled this thing out to the public. And one of the messages we heard was people wanted the growth to occur in the existing towns and cities, keep the city city, and keep the country country, protecting the working agriculture, the natural lands, etc. And they had a vision picture showing general land use, housing, employment patterns. Where should the jobs go? You know, a lot of times in development, the housing comes first, and when you get a certain amount of housing, then you get some commercial that supports it, and then you get way down the road some jobs. And often that means that the jobs and the housing are far away, more driving. If we think ahead a little bit, and you have some patient landowners, maybe you can set aside some job sites today and create some benefits down the road. There's transportation infrastructure, looking at trails. Trails is always important in these things. Bike paths, roads, transit, whether that's some kind of bus or, you know, down the road something else. Natural areas, working farms, wetlands, etc. And importantly, the message we heard over and over again was that jurisdictions need to collaborate and cooperate. Enough of this infighting, we're not getting anywhere. We may live in one community, but we live in a region. We work, we go to school, we shop in different areas. And Evan mentioned this. I found that one of the real important benefits of these processes is that people start to hear each other and understand each other's concerns a little bit more. And it provides kind of a new way for addressing not just planning issues, but other challenges that come up in a region. That's something not to be forgotten. We're able then to measure how the vision performs relative to the baseline. So if we continue on the course we're going, what are we going to look like? If we implement the vision, what are we going to look like? And comparing them, you know, there's impact on how much land is consumed. In this case, 21 fewer square miles in the next 30 years. 61% reduction in the conversion of working farmland. Reduction in water use, impervious acres, vehicle miles traveled, more transit ridership, reduction in emissions, reduction in infrastructure costs. So you're able to say that there are some concrete benefits. And then finally, implementation. It's one thing to have a nice vision, but one of the things we say is that vision without implementation is hallucination. It's really about getting something done on the ground. And this wouldn't be worthwhile without preparing for it. So throughout the process, we involved elected officials, exploring implementation strategies. As we started to see general ideas and concepts come forward, we tested with the public some implementation strategies. After this process was done, we held a couple of forums with elected officials, sharing the vision, having them sit down in groups as communities, starting to talk about what it meant for their town, for their county, and how they could adapt, if necessary, their ordinances and general plans to implement. We also, at the end of the day, created a report. And I've got a few copies back there and some more in the car if anybody wants to see them. But most of the report is implementation strategies. And it's talking about where people can get more information about those strategies and summarizes the process. So really a toolkit, something you can take, use in your communities, and make a difference. We also wanted to make sure there were lots of resources, and Cache County was terrific about this. The Cache Valley Regional Council has taken on the assignment of helping the individual jurisdictions implement their piece of the plan. There's a county planner that's designated to go around to those communities that don't have planning resources to help them. There's a website with model ordinances and other tools that are available. Now, I just want to touch on another thing. We've done some other processes. One is Vision Dixie, and Ken's going to talk about that at lunch, and I'm not going to go into detail other than to just say this was a process in Washington County, Utah, one of the fastest growing counties in the country. This is a point I wanted to make, and a lot of times we wonder, how do we pay for these things? In Washington County, we had, I think, about 35 different funding partners. And it was everything from, like the LDS Church Foundation to federal agencies to educational entities, the college, private entities. The state kicked some in, individual cities, the county put in some money, the Nature Conservancy, Southern Utah Home Builders, the realtors, the Chamber of Commerce, across the board. We think that's important. A lot of people buying in the process, nobody bearing too heavy a burden, and also showing that this is truly a regional effort, not driven by particular interests. So when you've got the Nature Conservancy and the home builders both funding it, you can say, all right, this is truly a community event. You can see that's just a depiction of their vision. Good things came out of it, a lot of positive press. Vision Dixie had purpose, intent, and offered real solutions. It was an editorial in the Spectrum. But the real issue is what matters here. What is the right approach for the people of Bear Lake? It's going to be different from other places, and it has to be driven by the people who live here. And I think ultimately, for me, the reason I'm doing this, and I would assume for many of you, it's so that down the road, my grandkids won't come to me and say, Grandpa, why didn't you do something when you could? Today's the day of our stewardship. Today's the day when we can make a difference, and there's an opportunity here. If we can help, great. We're happy to. But most of all, I just wish all of you best of luck as you move forward with this thing. So, thanks.
I'm going to introduce Sumner Swanner. I think he's a poor ranch boy that grew up in Park City. Does that work? Sure. Okay. Maybe he wasn't so poor, but yeah, ranch life. How could it be, right? I'm going to let him tell you his story because it's a great story. So, Sumner Swanner.
All right. Thanks, Claudia. My name's Sumner Swanner. I'm the founder for the Center of Green Space Design, which we're currently undergoing a name change because having green space on there really throws people, so we're changing it to green infrastructure. I'd just like to start off with Evan and Brian and Alan's presentations. Unless you're a pure planning junkie, I'm not going to try and cover that ground as much as I can because they've done a very, very good job of giving you an idea of visioning and long-range planning and so on and so forth. And before I launch into my background, I've got a couple of stories about Envision Utah. I actually had retired about 12 years ago and was starting to write a book on open spaces in America. And this was a little bit before Alan's time, and Envision had just kind of gotten off the ground with the Coalition for Utah's Future and had started some of their seminars and conferences down in Salt Lake City with Calthorpe and Ferganesi. And they actually pulled me out of retirement to do a project down in southern Utah County, just on a theory. I mean, our organizations are very closely aligned. We don't work together normally, but originally when Envision Utah started, they would hire my organization to do work for them, and then eventually they were able to bring all those things in-house.